I guess I am old school because for me, music from the 70s and the 60s had a more human feel to it. And now it seems like a lot of young musicians are preoccupied with technology and technique, which is secondary to me. Because the bottom line is, you make music to listen to. Listen. You know, only with your ears. And with the advent of Pro Tools, which I use all the time as a producer, I find sometimes instead of helping the music, I'm hurting the music by making it too perfect and making it, you know, putting everything on grid. And now that we have the ability to fix everything, that doesn't make it a good thing. You know, sometimes it's better to just as a producer, to stay out of a band's way and let them do what they're going to do. And, you know, for me, an artist's limitations have always been what define them as an artist. Lou Reed, Neil Young, you never ever hear Neil Young play piano or harmonica. It's real basic, it's real simple, it's very folky, you know? And that defines their sound, you know? And then you get all these guys that get out there and they play really quickly. You know, for one thing, I can't play real quickly because I never really found a reason to, you know? I respect that, but for me, music is, you know, from your soul, from your heart, and what's important is letting it be what it is. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk about the right hand for bass players. This is addressed to beginning bass players, probably, you know, just starting out with music. First of all, don't ever play bass without a metronome. Play along with something. I don't care if you play along with The Clash, or Led Zeppelin, or Bach, or a metronome. Play along with something, because our tendency is to get excited and to rush ahead. If you can just go, if you can keep that time close to the time that you started, if the beginning can be close to the end in tempo, you're doing great. And it's the space in between notes with the bass. I play a short scale bass. I played a Mustang all my life through an Orange, just because it gets an older vintage sound. The sound of one note is super important. It's not about getting in there, and it's not about a race to the end of the song. You got to be one with your drummer and play and let the music have space. If you can, rather than, you know, this is a straight, you know, straight bass line here, right? With no space in it. There's nothing really exciting about that. But if you put spaces in between, it creates a feel. It creates a particular feel. And that is what makes the difference between a great bass player and a pretty good bass player. It's about muting the string, okay? When you play a note, you can just hit the note, let it ring, or you can hit the note and stop it. A lot of people criticize me for playing a short scale bass because it doesn't get the sustain that a full scale bass gets. I like that. Sustain doesn't mean appropriate in all situations, you know? Sustain's great, but, you know, if you want sustain, you can hit a synthesizer note and that'll sustain forever. For me, this bass dies out at just the right time, most of the time. Sometimes I use a long scale, depends on what I'm doing. But, so, your right hand is much more important than the speed of your left hand. A lot of people are always practicing scales and trying to get quicker and faster and learning. It's not about that. It's about playing to the song and leaving space in between the notes. Just one note. That's groovy, you know? A drummer can settle right into that, as opposed to space creates energy. You know, if when you're watching a movie and there's a slow motion scene maybe of somebody crossing the street and there's a car coming and they slow it down. You know, it's that space between when you see they're going to get hit and when they get hit that creates tension and energy. It's the same thing with music. A couple of my favorite bass players are Ron Wood, Andy Fraser, one of my favorites of all time, from Free. That guy, he played bass like a tuba, you know? You know, and that to me is just so, that it defined his sound. You know, the space that he put in between notes defined his sound. One thing that's important too about your right hand, that's where your sound comes from as a bass player, you know? You can bring 10 guys in here and ask them to, you know, hit an A string. They're all going to do something different. It's all going to sound different because the amount of pressure that you place on the string and the amount of space you leave in between and, you know, how hard the tip of your fingers are. I use a metal pick when I want to get real attack. You have to develop an instinct for a song to figure out whether it's going to be better to play with your fingers or better to play with a pick. Depends on the music, you know. If the music's more aggressive, you know, punk rock or whatever, you know, using a metal pick gives it a little bit more energy, a little bit more edge. It helps the bass stand out a little bit. You know, but if you're playing country or whatever, or reggae, you know, might want to use your fingers. Depends. As a bass player, as a keyboard player, as a drummer, as a guitar player, it doesn't matter. You always have to remember, you're part of the machine. You know, you're part of this whole thing called a band and creating a song, and you have to do what's appropriate.